The galaxy had known peace for centuries, governed by a collective of interstellar species, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. But when the Exathar, a ruthless race of hyper-intelligent conquerors from beyond the known galaxies, descended upon the systems, everything changed. They came without warning, and in a matter of weeks, they shattered the fragile peace that had held the galaxy together for millennia. Humanity, once considered insignificant by the galactic powers, suddenly found itself at the heart of the conflict. The Exathar did not care for diplomacy, nor for the politics of the established empires. They saw only one thing in their conquest: the eradication of those who would stand in the way of their dominance. Planet after planet fell, as the Exathar used their superior technology and devastating weaponry to crush civilizations that had long stood proud. In this chaos, Earth became the last bastion of resistance. The leaders of the surviving worlds, the remnants of once mighty fleets, retreated to the human homeworld. The Exathar had not yet fully realized the potential of humanity, but they were soon to discover that their arrogance would be their downfall. The human race, though small in number and inexperienced in the ways of galactic war, had something the Exathar had underestimated: the unwavering will to fight. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the helm of the newly formed Earth Defense Fleet, her eyes fixed on the vast, swirling expanse of space before her. The situation was dire. The Exathar's invasion had crushed the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, leaving the surviving species in disarray. Yet, Elena knew something the Exathar didn't: humans had a knack for surviving against impossible odds. That resilience, that spark of ingenuity, would be the key to their survival. "Ready for deployment, Captain," said Lieutenant Marcus, her trusted second-in-command, his voice steady but tense. "We've gathered every available ship, every piece of tech we could salvage. But the Exathar, they're coming. The final assault is inevitable." Elena clenched her fist. The remnants of the old galactic order had failed, but she wouldn't. She had seen the horror of the Exathar's advance firsthand, witnessed entire star systems burn in their wake. But the Exathar had made one critical mistake: they had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to fight back when cornered. "Initiate the plan," she ordered. "We'll show them what it means to make the last stand of a dying galaxy." In a war that had torn the galaxy apart, Earth was now the final hope. Elena's fleet was humanity's last line of defense, and they would not go down without a fight. But they would need more than just brute force to win. They would need to tap into the ingenuity that had brought humanity this far, their resourcefulness, their unpredictability, and their unyielding spirit. As the human fleet prepared to face the Exathar juggernaut, an ancient artifact, long forgotten by the galaxy's civilizations, was unearthed on Earth. This artifact, once thought to be a myth, could hold the key to turning the tide of war. And Captain Elena Reyes knew that if they could harness its power, humanity might just have a chance. But even as the human fleet readied itself, the Exathar were already preparing for the final, crushing assault. Their leader, Supreme Commander Varrak, surveyed the destruction his forces had wrought. He was a cold, calculating strategist, with little patience for failure. The galaxy was on the brink of total subjugation, and humanity's last stand would be nothing more than a brief, ignoble spark in the dark vastness of space. But Varrak hadn't reckoned with the depths of human determination. He thought the human race would crumble before the might of his forces, but he was about to learn that humanity had something far more powerful than mere technology: they had hope. The human fleet gathered around Earth, their last refuge, preparing for a war they knew they couldn't win by conventional means. The Exathar might have the numbers, the firepower, and the technology, but humans had something different: a spark, a drive that no machine or weapon could replicate. And Captain Elena Reyes had made it her mission to ignite that spark into something formidable. The ancient artifact, a crystalline object unearthed from a long-forgotten underground vault beneath the surface of Earth, was a key to humanity's future. No one knew exactly what it did, but ancient texts suggested it held the power to alter the course of battles, maybe even entire wars. Elena had instructed her best scientists to study it in secret, but she wasn't waiting for answers. She needed results, and she needed them now. In the heart of Earth's most secure military base, deep beneath the surface, Dr. Sophia Hayes and her team worked around the clock to unlock the artifact's secrets. A brilliant scientist and a veteran of the earlier skirmishes with the Exathar, Dr. Hayes had seen the horrors firsthand. Her family was lost to the Exathar, and she had a personal vendetta now. Every day, she threw herself into the research with a passion fueled by grief and rage. "This artifact is unlike anything we've ever encountered," Dr. Hayes said, staring intently at the glowing crystal on her workbench. "The structure of its energy signature isn't like any known technology. It seems to resonate with something deeper. It's almost as if it's responding to our presence." Elena stood beside her, arms crossed, studying the artifact with a mix of wonder and wariness. "Do you think we can weaponize it?" she asked. Dr. Hayes hesitated for a moment. "Weaponize? I'm not sure it was made for that purpose. But if we can figure out how it works, there may be a way to harness its power for the fleet. Something to turn the tide of battle. Maybe something that will make the Exathar see humanity differently." "We don't have the luxury of time," Elena replied sharply. "The Exathar are already gathering their forces for the final assault. We need results yesterday." Just as Elena spoke, a loud beeping filled the room. One of Dr. Hayes's monitors blinked red, a warning sign of an incoming transmission. The screen flickered, and a holographic message from an allied species, the Erythians, appeared. "We have intel," the Erythian commander's hologram projected. "The Exathar have amassed their forces near the outer rim of the galaxy. They're preparing to strike Earth with their entire fleet. If we do not act now, they will wipe out every last human and take Earth for themselves." The news hit like a punch to the gut. Earth was about to become the epicenter of the greatest battle the galaxy had ever seen, and the odds were impossibly stacked against them. The Exathar were ruthless, methodical, and they had already defeated the most advanced forces in the galaxy. Humanity was alone, with no allies left to call on. "How much time do we have?" Elena demanded, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. 2 weeks at most," the Erythian commander replied grimly. "They've already deployed their advanced warships to intercept any ships attempting to flee. If your fleet doesn't act fast, Earth will fall." Elena turned to Dr. Hayes, the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. The artifact was their last hope, she could feel it in her bones, but was it enough? Was it ready? "We're going to have to move forward," Elena said, determination in her voice. "Prepare the fleet. We'll use whatever we have, including this artifact, to hold them off. No matter what the cost." As the message ended and the room fell silent, Elena took a deep breath. The weight of leadership, the responsibility of millions of lives, had never been more real. But she had no choice but to fight, to give humanity a chance to survive. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship of the Exathar, Supreme Commander Varrak was preparing for the final phase of his invasion. He looked over the holographic map of Earth's solar system, his cold gaze fixed on the small blue planet that had become humanity's final refuge. "Prepare the fleet for immediate engagement," Varrak ordered. "This will be the end of Earth, and the last vestiges of their resistance. No one escapes the inevitable." Despite the Exathar's confidence, they had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated the human spirit. And Captain Elena Reyes knew that the moment of reckoning was coming. The question was no longer if they could survive, but how many would stand by the end of it. The days leading up to the Exathar assault were filled with feverish preparations. Across Earth's military bases, soldiers, engineers, and scientists worked tirelessly to ready the fleet for the coming battle. The artifact was still shrouded in mystery, its full capabilities uncertain, but one thing was clear: it had to play a pivotal role in humanity's defense. Dr. Hayes and her team had succeeded in unlocking a fragment of its potential, an energy pulse capable of disrupting enemy weapon systems. But the real question was whether they could use it to turn the tide of war, or if it would just be a desperate last-ditch effort. Captain Elena Reyes stood on the command deck of the Vanguard, the flagship of the human fleet. Her eyes scanned the vast expanse of space outside the window. The Exathar fleet was on the move, and it was massive, dozens of warships, each a formidable fortress in its own right, now headed toward Earth. Elena knew the odds, and they were overwhelming. The human fleet, cobbled together from the remnants of countless worlds, was no match for the Exathar's might. But Elena was determined to make them fight for every inch of ground. "All ships are ready, Captain," Lieutenant Marcus reported, his voice tense but resolute. "We've patched together the best we could, but we're still outgunned and outnumbered." "We don't need to outgun them, Marcus," Elena said, her voice calm but firm. "We just need to make them bleed. We need to show them that humanity isn't some weak species to be crushed. We'll fight with everything we've got." Around her, the crew nodded in agreement. There was a fire in their eyes, determination, a refusal to give in to the crushing weight of inevitability. As Earth's skies darkened with the shadow of Exathar warships, the human fleet moved into position. The vanguard led the charge, flanked by smaller but agile ships, each one packed with makeshift weaponry, experimental tech, and hope. They had no illusions that they would win this battle in a conventional sense. Their only hope was to slow the Exathar down long enough to unleash the power of the artifact. The first wave of Exathar ships entered the solar system, their sleek, black vessels cutting through space like a swarm of predatory insects. Their sensors quickly locked onto the human fleet, and moments later, the first salvo of plasma fire rained down on Earth's defenses. The explosion of energy shook the vanguard, but Elena held firm, her hands steady on the controls. "Return fire," she shouted. "All ships, target the enemy warship's engines. We can't let them close the gap." The human fleet unleashed everything they had. Laser cannons, missile barrages, and energy beams shot out into the vastness of space, striking the incoming Exathar ships. But the enemy's shields absorbed most of the fire with ease. The sheer difference in firepower was apparent, but humanity refused to surrender. Targeting the Exathar flagship, Lieutenant Marcus reported. "We need to take down their command center if we have any chance of disrupting their coordination." Elena nodded, her mind racing. They could never match the Exathar's technology head-on, but they had something more unpredictable, their sheer will to survive. She was counting on it. "Coordinate with the Nova Storm," she ordered. "Deploy the distraction drones. We need to draw their fire and open up a gap in their defenses." On her command, the fleet launched dozens of small, agile drones equipped with decoy signals designed to confuse the Exathar targeting systems. The Exathar were quick to adapt, but the distraction bought humanity a precious few seconds. The human ships focused all their fire on the Exathar flagship, a massive dreadnought that loomed ominously at the head of the advancing fleet. The Exathar flagship's shields flared brightly as the human fleet's weapons hammered into them. But the damage was minimal. Human weapons weren't powerful enough to breach the advanced defenses of the flagship. Elena gritted her teeth in frustration. They had to do more. "Dr. Hayes," she said over the comms, her voice urgent, "we need the artifact now. The Exathar are too strong. We need to disrupt their systems before they break through our defenses." "We're activating the artifact now, Captain," came Dr. Hayes' voice. "It's not fully calibrated, but we're ready to release the pulse." In a hidden bunker deep beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Hayes and her team stood ready. They had finally figured out how to channel the artifact's energy. A pulse capable of interfering with the Exathar's advanced weapons systems was their best shot. But there was no telling if it would work, or if it would even be powerful enough to turn the tide. With a press of a button, Dr. Hayes unleashed the pulse. Across the battlefield, a strange energy wave rippled through space, originating from Earth and spreading outward. The Exathar flagship, along with several other warships, faltered. Their energy shields flickered, and for the first time in the battle, the Exathar seemed uncertain. "Now!" Elena shouted. The human fleet surged forward, every ship targeting the vulnerable enemy vessels. The damage wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to level the playing field. The Exathar, momentarily thrown into disarray, began to regroup. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to surprise, and to find a way out of the darkest corners. But the battle was far from over. The Exathar fleet began retaliating, firing back with devastating force. Ships exploded, debris scattered across the battlefield, and the human fleet was pushed to its limits. But Elena refused to give up. In the midst of the chaos, Elena realized one thing: the artifact was only part of the solution. Humanity's true strength lay in their unity, their resilience, and their willingness to fight for survival, no matter how impossible the odds. And that was something the Exathar would soon understand. The battle raged on as the Exathar fleet recovered from the initial disruption caused by the artifact's energy pulse. Their superior numbers and advanced technology were evident, but for the first time, they were being forced to fight on humanity's terms. The human fleet, battered but relentless, pressed on with everything they had. Their ships were taking heavy losses, their hulls scorched by plasma fire, but they fought with a fire that the Exathar had not anticipated. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the helm of the Vanguard, her knuckles white on the command console. The human fleet had managed to land some serious blows, but the Exathar were adapting. They were too smart, too calculating, and their retaliations were brutal. "Captain, the Vanguard is taking critical damage to our port side," Lieutenant Marcus reported, his voice grim. "We can't keep this up much longer. We need to fall back or we'll be destroyed." Elena glanced at the screen. The human fleet was spread thin, desperately holding the line, but the Exathar were pushing forward with unrelenting force. A retreat was impossible, Earth was at stake, and they had no backup. They either stood and fought or they lost everything. "We don't retreat," Elena said, her voice firm, determined. "We fight until the last ship is gone. Prepare the fleet for a last-ditch offensive. We're going to take down that flagship, no matter the cost." As the Vanguard sailed through space, the hum of its engines and the whine of weapons fire in the background, Elena couldn't help but wonder if they had any real chance of winning. The Exathar were so far ahead in technology, their war strategies so far beyond humanity's limited experience. What made her believe that they could win this? It was hope. A hope born of desperation, of knowing that there was no other option. They had nothing to lose. But just as she was about to issue another command, a strange signal crackled over the comms, something different from the standard Exathar frequencies. It was coming from a nearby asteroid field. A distant transmission that had been distorted by the battle but still audible. "Captain, we've intercepted an encrypted message," said one of the comms officers, their voice full of curiosity. "It's not Exathar. It's human." Elena's heart skipped a beat. Was it possible? A reinforcement fleet? A long-lost group of humans still out there, perhaps hiding among the ruins of forgotten space colonies? "Patch it through," Elena ordered. The transmission came through, garbled and fragmented, but the voice was unmistakably human. "This is Captain Victor Hawk of the Pride of Earth. We've been tracking the Exathar since the beginning of their invasion. We're part of a covert operation called Project Phoenix, designed to survive when all else fails. We're here to assist." The words hung in the air like a lifeline. Elena had heard rumors of hidden human forces, but she had dismissed them as myth. Now, they were real. The cavalry had arrived. "Project Phoenix?" Elena repeated, unable to hide the disbelief in her voice. "Where are you, Captain Hawk? We need reinforcements now." "Just outside the asteroid belt. We've got a fleet of cloaked ships, all equipped with advanced stealth technology," Captain Hawk's voice crackled through the comms. "We're ready to hit the Exathar from behind. We'll take their command ships and disrupt their fleet from within. But we need to coordinate with you. If we attack now, we'll draw the Exathar's attention, but we'll have the element of surprise." Elena's mind raced. This was the breakthrough they needed, an unexpected ally, a hidden fleet. The Exathar had no idea that humanity had forces outside their detection. If they could synchronize their attack with the arrival of the Phoenix fleet, they might have a chance at crippling the Exathar war effort for good. "Understood, Captain Hawk," Elena replied, her voice now filled with renewed purpose. "We'll keep the Exathar occupied and draw them into position. Once you engage, we'll follow up and take down their command center." No one leaves this battlefield until we've won. Roger that. Phoenix Fleet is ready to move. We'll strike when you're in position. With a new sense of hope flooding her veins, Elena immediately began issuing commands to her fleet. They would have to hold the line just a little longer, maintain pressure on the Exathar forces without being overwhelmed. It would be a dangerous maneuver, but it was their best shot. Meanwhile, the Exathar fleet, unaware of the human reinforcements now in play, continued its push toward Earth. Supreme Commander Varrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as human ships continued to engage with his forces. They were more tenacious than he'd expected, but that wouldn't be enough. Soon, they would be crushed beneath the weight of his fleet. Prepare the final assault, Varrak ordered coldly. We end this now. Take Earth. But as Varrak issued his orders, a flicker of movement on the sensors caught his attention. A small group of ships, cloaked and nearly invisible to his advanced systems, had entered the fray. They were human ships, somehow hidden, somehow capable of bypassing his fleet's detection. His brow furrowed in confusion. Where did they come from? He growled, leaning toward his officers. Unknown, Commander, one of his subordinates replied, panic creeping into his voice. They must have been waiting for the right moment. Varrak's eyes narrowed. It was too late to turn back now. The final assault on Earth had already begun, but the sudden appearance of this unknown fleet complicated matters. His ships, distracted by the new threat, began to lose their focus. On the battlefield, chaos erupted as the human reinforcements emerged from the shadows, launching a surprise attack on the Exathar flagship and their vulnerable command vessels. The battle was about to take a drastic turn. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the moment that could change everything. The final stand for humanity was underway. The unexpected arrival of the Phoenix fleet threw the Exathar into disarray. Captain Elena Reyes could see the immediate shift in the enemy's tactics as the cloaked ships of Project Phoenix began appearing out of the darkness, their advanced stealth technology giving them the element of surprise. The Exathar flagship sensors struggled to lock onto the newly arrived fleet, and the sudden chaos gave the human forces a much-needed upper hand. Captain, we've got them on the ropes. Lieutenant Marcus shouted, his voice full of urgency. The Exathar are losing formation. We've got a window of opportunity. Elena's eyes flitted across the tactical display, watching as the Exathar ships stumbled in their response, trying to recalibrate their weapons to account for the new threat. The Phoenix fleet's stealth ships darted through the fray, launching precision strikes on key enemy warships. Missiles and plasma bursts ignited in brilliant flashes as the cloaked ships hammered at their targets. We can't waste this chance, Elena said firmly. All ships, focus fire on their flagship. We need to take down their command center once and for all. Her voice carried the weight of the moment, the last chance humanity had to break the Exathar's stranglehold on the galaxy. If they could disable the flagship, it would cripple the Exathar's command structure and sow chaos throughout their ranks. Without leadership, the Exathar would lose their coordination, and the tide of battle could shift in humanity's favor. The human fleet, rejuvenated by the unexpected reinforcements, surged forward, pushing against the Exathar's faltering lines. Explosions lit up the dark expanse of space as ships collided, and the cries of battle echoed across the comms. The Phoenix fleet worked in perfect tandem with the human ships, striking with precision and speed. On the vanguard, Elena stood tall at the helm, her eyes locked on the tactical screen. They were getting closer to the Exathar flagship, its gargantuan form looming large at the heart of the battlefield. The flagship's energy shields flickered under the sustained barrage, but they were still holding strong. We need to disable their shield generators, Elena muttered under her breath. Marcus, any way we can get through those shields? Marcus studied the screen for a moment. We've got one shot. We've been working on an experimental weapon, low yield, but it could bypass their shields by sending a pulse directly to their power core. It's risky. We'd need to get within range before they can react. Elena's mind raced. The risk was enormous, but there was no time for hesitation. The opportunity was now. Do it, she commanded, voice unwavering. As the vanguard closed in on the flagship, the Exathar seemed to regain their footing. Their massive warships turned toward the human fleet, preparing for a counteroffensive. But the Phoenix fleet kept pressing forward, keeping the Exathar distracted long enough for the vanguard to get within striking distance. Steady, steady, Elena muttered, watching as her ship maneuvered between debris and enemy fire, getting closer to the flagship with every passing second. She could feel the tension in the air, the fate of humanity hanging by a thread. Suddenly, the signal came in. "We're locked on, Captain. Firing now." A brilliant pulse shot out from the vanguard, streaking through the darkness of space. The energy beam hit the Exathar flagship with a resounding impact, causing the flagship's shields to crack and sputter. For a brief moment, the giant warship was exposed. "Now!" Elena shouted. "All ships, fire everything we've got." The Vanguard and the Phoenix fleet unleashed their full arsenal in a synchronized barrage. Laser beams, missiles, and energy blasts converged on the now vulnerable flagship. The flagship's core began to flicker as the first signs of catastrophic failure appeared. Explosions rang out from its hull as the weapons systems began to shut down. But the Exathar weren't done yet. From within the flagship's depths, emergency reinforcements began deploying, a new class of fighter ships, designed specifically for this moment of last-ditch retaliation. They swarmed the human fleet like a cloud of angry hornets, engaging the Phoenix fleet in a deadly dogfight. "Incoming!" Enemy fighters at 12 o'clock, one of the Vanguard's gunners called out. Elena gritted her teeth. "Hold them off. We're almost there." The human fleet held its ground, using their agility and resourcefulness to fight off the superior Exathar fighters. The Phoenix fleet, despite its technological advantages, was still a small force compared to the Exathar. But the element of surprise and the sheer will to survive kept them pressing forward. Then, a voice crackled through the comms, breaking through the chaos. "Captain Reyes," it was Captain Hawk of the Phoenix fleet, his voice tight with excitement. "We've done it. We've breached the flagship's core. The enemy is starting to lose control of their power grid. It's only a matter of time before the ship goes critical." Elena's heart raced. This was the moment. The Exathar flagship was on the verge of collapse, and with it, the command structure of their entire fleet. Victory was within reach. "All ships, focus fire on the remaining Exathar warships," Elena ordered. "We can't let them regroup." With their command structure in disarray, the Exathar began to falter. The once mighty warships were now vulnerable, their lines breaking apart as chaos rippled through their forces. But the battle was far from over. As the flagship's core began to collapse, sending shockwaves through the rest of the Exathar fleet, Varrak, the Exathar supreme commander, was still alive. And he was not going down without a fight. "Prepare for the final push," Elena said, her voice low but resolute. "This ends now." The Exathar flagship was on the verge of complete destruction, its systems failing rapidly as explosions raked through its enormous hull. But even as the heart of their fleet crumbled, Supreme Commander Varrak's cold, calculating mind refused to accept defeat. The Exathar were conquerors. They did not retreat, they did not flee, and they would never allow a single human victory to tarnish their empire. Across the battlefield, Varrak stood in the command center of his flagship, watching his forces disintegrate on the massive holoscreen before him. His pulse quickened, but his expression remained unwavering. He knew what needed to be done. If he couldn't win this battle with his fleet, he would win it by destroying Earth itself. "Activate the self-destruct sequence," Varrak ordered, his voice as calm and lethal as ever. "If we cannot claim Earth, then no one shall." The Exathar flagship, already in critical condition, began to hum with a deadly energy. The self-destruct sequence was initiated, and soon a countdown began, signaling the end of their last hope. Varrak's eyes gleamed with a malevolent satisfaction as he watched the countdown on his console. His ship's destruction would be a devastating blow to humanity. Meanwhile, on the Vanguard, Captain Elena Reyes felt a deep sense of unease wash over her. The Exathar flagship was clearly in its death throes, but something didn't sit right. The battlefield had shifted, humanity was winning, but the Exathar were too dangerous to underestimate, especially with a supreme commander like Varrak at the helm. "Captain," Lieutenant Marcus said, his voice strained. "The flagship is going critical. They're initiating a self-destruct sequence. If that ship goes up, the shockwave will take out half of our fleet." Elena's eyes widened. A self-destruct meant they had mere moments to act. "How much time do we have?" 15 minutes, Marcus replied grimly. "We need to get out of range of the explosion, or we'll be caught in the blast." "Alert all ships," Elena commanded, her voice sharp. "Evacuate the area. All ships, move to a safe distance, now." The human fleet, despite the chaos of battle, sprang into action. Ships broke off from the main fight, retreating to safe distances as the countdown on the flagship's self-destruct system ticked away. Elena's heart raced as she watched the seconds slip away. If they didn't act quickly, the entire human fleet would be wiped out in one cataclysmic explosion. But even as her fleet withdrew, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that Varrak had one last trick up his sleeve. The Exathar were cunning, and their supreme commander was known for never backing down, even when faced with annihilation. Elena's instincts screamed that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. "Marcus, keep an eye on Varrak's ship," Elena ordered. "If that ship detonates, we need to be ready to deal with whatever comes next." The next moments were filled with tension as the countdown reached its final seconds. The human fleet scrambled to clear the danger zone, but they couldn't afford to be too far from the battlefield. If they did retreat completely, they would lose their chance to completely dismantle the Exathar fleet. Their warships were weakened, but they were still formidable. With just 5 seconds remaining, the unthinkable happened. From the depths of the Exathar flagship, an enormous energy surge erupted, lighting up space like a second sun. The human fleet braced for impact, expecting the worst. But the explosion didn't come. Instead, a second, far more ominous sound filled the comms, a transmission from the Exathar flagship. "This is Supreme Commander Varrak," his voice echoed through the static, cold and unyielding. "The destruction of my flagship is but a diversion. You believe you've won, but I have already enacted the final phase of the invasion." Elena froze. "What do you mean, the final phase?" Varrak's voice hissed with venom. "Earth will burn. If I am to fall, then your precious world shall fall with me. My fleet may be shattered, but I have already launched the final weapon." A chilling silence fell over the human fleet. Elena's mind raced as she processed his words. The Exathar hadn't given up. They had one more weapon hidden in the depths of their plans, a weapon they had yet to unleash. "Where is it coming from?" Elena demanded. Before she could receive an answer, the holoscreen flashed with new data. A massive, unknown object, something far larger than any ship the Exathar had previously deployed, was emerging from deep within the Exathar fleet's scattered remnants. It was a massive weapon, capable of erasing entire planets from existence. Elena felt her stomach drop as the object revealed its true form, a colossal weapon, shaped like a massive drill, and its core glowing with the energy of 1,000 suns. It was already powering up, heading straight for Earth. "Marcus!" Elena snapped, her voice laced with urgency. "What is that thing?" That's a planet killer." Marcus shouted, his face pale. "It's designed to pierce through a planet's core and destroy it from the inside out. If that hits Earth, we'll be obliterated." "Not if I can help it," Elena said, the weight of the situation sinking in. They had seconds to stop a weapon that could destroy an entire world. "All ships, focus fire on that weapon," Elena ordered. "We can't let it reach Earth. If it gets close enough, it will destroy us all." The human fleet, already scattered from the Exathar flagship's destruction, rallied one last time. It was a desperate move, but it was all they had. The fleet's remaining ships opened fire, their weapons converging on the massive planet killer. But the weapon's shields were too strong, human firepower was ineffective against the enormous force field surrounding the weapon. "We need to find a way to disable its shields," Elena said, her mind racing. "Marcus, are there any weaknesses?" "We've got one shot," Marcus replied, his voice tight. "There's a small exhaust vent on its underside. If we can hit it with a concentrated energy blast, we might be able to overload its power core." Elena's hands gripped the command console. "Then we'll take our shot. All ships, focus everything on that vent. This is our last chance." The final battle for Earth had begun. The human fleet, battered and bruised from the earlier chaos, rallied around the last hope, the massive planet-killer weapon now looming in space, its menacing form casting a dark shadow across the battlefield. The Exathar, in their desperation, had deployed their ultimate weapon, a force of destruction so powerful that a single strike could obliterate Earth from the inside out. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the helm of the Vanguard, her heart pounding in her chest. The last few moments had passed in a blur, and the weight of responsibility now fell squarely on her shoulders. The human fleet, outgunned and outnumbered, was all that stood between Earth and total annihilation. "All ships, focus fire on the exhaust vent at the planet killer's underside," Elena ordered, her voice steely with determination. "We have one chance to stop this thing. If we fail, Earth dies. We all die." The fleet's remaining ships rallied, their weapons charged and aimed at the critical target. The Vanguard led the charge, cutting through the stars with a singular purpose. Elena knew the odds, they had one shot, and if they missed, there was no second chance. "Targeting exhaust vent," Lieutenant Marcus called out, his eyes glued to the targeting system. "Weapons are locked on." "Steady," Elena murmured under her breath. The ship trembled slightly as it entered the final stage of the approach. She could see the massive weapon, the drill-like structure of the Exathar planet killer, growing larger in the viewscreen. The exhaust vent was small in comparison to the vast weapon, but its placement was the only weak point. If they hit it with the precise force needed, it could cause a catastrophic overload that would destroy the weapon before it could fire. The human ships adjusted their positions, taking evasive maneuvers as the Exathar fleet, in a final act of retaliation, opened fire. The battle was raging again, but the stakes had never been higher. In this moment, all that mattered was that one exhaust vent. "Fire!" Elena shouted, her voice breaking through the comms. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the Vanguard's cannons, followed by a coordinated barrage from the other human ships. The shots arced toward the planet killer, striking its underside, but the thick shields deflected the initial attacks. Elena's heart stopped for a brief moment, but then, the unexpected happened. The shield around the planet killer flickered, just for a fraction of a second. It was all they needed. "Again!" Elena shouted, her voice full of resolve. "Concentrate everything on that opening. Now!" The fleet's weapons fired again, and this time, the shots landed true. The beam from the Vanguard hit the exhaust vent directly, followed by a cascade of concentrated fire from the remaining ships. The exhaust vent shuddered under the impact, and then the explosion was immediate and catastrophic. A massive shockwave rippled through the vast expanse of space. The planet killer trembled violently, its core destabilizing. The weapon's power systems overloaded, and in the blink of an eye, the entire structure began to break apart. Bolts of energy shot out from the heart of the weapon, illuminating space with a terrifying brilliance. Elena's eyes widened as the weapon detonated, the explosion consuming it from the inside out. It was the kind of blast that, had it gone off closer to Earth, would have reduced the planet to dust. But now, as the weapon broke apart, there was nothing left of it but glowing fragments and the expanding shockwave. The Exathar fleet, already in disarray from the loss of their flagship and the human reinforcements, faltered. Their final weapon, their last hope for victory, was gone. The remaining Exathar ships tried to regroup, but without their command structure, without their ultimate weapon, they were just another scattered force, hopelessly outmatched. "Is it over?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with awe and disbelief as the shockwave from the explosion faded into the cold void. Elena took a deep breath, watching the remains of the planet killer dissipate in space. "Not yet," she said, shaking her head. "We still have to deal with the rest of their fleet." But just as she was about to issue the next command, the comms crackled with an unexpected transmission, a message from the Phoenix fleet. "Captain Reyes," Captain Hawk's voice came through, calm but urgent. "The Exathar are retreating. They've lost their command ship, their planet killer, and they no longer have the strength to continue the invasion. We're picking up signals of their retreat across all sectors. It's over." A wave of relief washed over Elena, but she forced herself to stay focused. "Confirm the retreat, Captain. I'll need all fleet reports before we proceed." Hawk's voice came through again, this time with a note of finality. "Confirmed, Captain. The Exathar are pulling back. Their fleet is in disarray. Earth is safe." Elena felt a surge of emotions: exhaustion, relief, triumph. Humanity had won. Against impossible odds, they had fought back the Exathar and destroyed their plans to wipe out Earth. It was the kind of victory that legends were made of, one that would be remembered for generations. "All ships, stand down," Elena said, her voice softening as she allowed herself a brief moment to exhale. "We've won. Earth is safe." As the remaining human fleet began to regroup, Elena looked out at the stars, knowing the battle was over. The war was far from won, the Exathar would undoubtedly regroup, rebuild, and return. But today, humanity had proven something that no one, not even the Exathar, could deny: when pushed to the brink, humanity would fight with everything they had. And when there was no other choice, they would defy the odds and triumph. The victory would be remembered not just as the day Earth was saved, but as the day humanity proved its place in the galaxy. It was the day that every species in the stars would learn: humanity would never surrender. It was the day the Exathar learned to fear the unbreakable spirit of mankind. The last hope had not just survived, it had triumphed.